All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 5. So if you're here, please turn on your cameras for attendance, and don't forget about the attendance sheet as well. Okay, let's see. Okay. So we, mm, cool. So I hope everybody is doing okay. Um, this week we're going to continue to talk about content analysis. Um, we cover, if you remember, I covered a different type of content analysis last time, which was quantitative deductive content analysis. And there's another type that we'll discuss today. And then we're going to practice as a matter of fact. So let me do a quick recap. So we said like content analysis, you basically say population of content, which is different than a population of people, despite the image you see in this list. So population of content, the things you want to analyze, then how you want to sample. You want to do like a time frame and a random sample, or you do everything, or you do like arbitrarily choose something. And we said preferably it's random if you want to do sampling. And then we say the units of analysis could vary greatly, could be as small as like one word or one symbol, and as large like a full video or like a picture or like a full paragraph or like a movie to movie. And so the units of analysis is the things that you are going to look at, which would be each one would represent a one case, right? And we said like the idea because you have like a large, either large but like body of text, pictures, just a large like observable content, and you want to extract something measurable from it, right? So once we have, in the example I gave the article we discussed last time, they are like pictures from fitness websites. And then instead of trying to analyze each single picture arbitrarily and coming up with your impression, you can summarize them into 4 or 5 main categories and then look at the percentages, right? So what percentage it had, like, for example, sex objectification, like sexual objectification or not, right? What percentages have like appeal to thinness, and what percentage were had an appeal into like body shaming, right? Or fat shaming. So yeah, like we have large body of things, and we then have limited number of manageable categories which we can compare, right? And so because of that, you can present findings that summarize basically a large body of text. So, is there anyone confused about how content analysis works? Like, do you have any questions from last week or things that you thought were unclear, vague, or too complicated? Okay, cool. Um, because then we're going to talk about something different today. So this is going to be much simpler. So I have a quick exercise we can do together. So I'm going to show you a bunch of photos in each slide. And you have to, well, you don't really have to, but you're encouraged to tell me like 2 categories, only 2 two categories, which the photos can be assigned to. So you see a bunch of photos, you tell me two categories, and then like one half could belong to one category and the other half would belong to the second category, right? Um, so you can answer in chat or just verbally, I don't mind. So yeah, you see the pictures and tell me what two categories you can think of, okay? All right, so let's start. So here are the pictures. Tell me two categories.
Could sports or basketball be one of them?
Okay, you tell me. So,
I say basketball. It could be a category.
okay, so basketball, and the other one would be what? So let's see here. Okay, so Scotty has basketball and fashion. Okay. Um, by the way, do you know who this person is? Okay. Okay. You know KD, you know who Kevin Durant is, right? I'm assuming. Familiar? Yes, no.
Was gonna
You can
say
just
on and off the court, maybe.
okay, yeah. Josie, you want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, you could say like in uniform and then he's in a sweatsuit and three of them.
Okay, yeah. On uniform, off uniform, on the court, off the court, playing basketball, and then showing off his clothing, right? Yeah. So those are two things, right? So it could be on court performance or out of the court, or it could be just wearing like basketball jersey versus wearing like normal clothing. Okay, and actually, the shoe is a common theme. That's interesting. I did not pay attention to that, which is now an interest. So this is from Kevin Durant's Instagram accounts, and since Jared's changed shoe, I wonder if the Nike sneakers appear in all of his photos. Yeah, but at least in the sample I created with the, and I didn't pay attention to that. That was completely normal. Okay, healthy versus injured. Yeah, could be right. So yeah. So somewhat different categorizations, but I think you get the idea. All right. Here's another one. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's interesting. Who else? So yeah, I have from Tommy and Jared. Okay, so the one from Tommy is advertisement versus pre-game. All right. So you have technically that's called promotion, by the way, but but it's called promotion. Um, and the other is like pre-game, or like it's like when you walk into the court, or like before. So it's stable center. So that's why. And we have headphones versus no headphones, which I also did not pay attention to when I sampled these pictures. So you're right. In some pictures, he's wearing headphones, in others not. Or as Alisa's saying, it's like listening to music and non-listening. Okay. Any other ideas? And the one for advertisement versus pregame, it could also be promoting something, not promoting something, or promoting a brand, not promoting a brand. All right. So that's like could be a divide. All right. Here, I think this one is a bit harder, but or actually easier, not harder. So yeah, two categories. And this is from the San Diego Zoo. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So yeah, animals with yeah. So animals with an infant or an offspring, and or without an offspring. Okay. Right. Okay. So that's clear. Okay. Now this is a bit harder. So now you're reading text. So this is from Peterson Donut Corner Facebook account. It's not really hard. So two categories. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jared, what do you mean by number of likes versus number of comments?
Like I guess like each post has like you can see in the first post it's like 159 likes but it has 22 comments, and the post below that has like 167 likes or like upvotes. I don't know what they're called. um like and then it only has 14 comments, so like photos can receive like more comments on less liked like posts.
Oh, so you mean like high comments post versus high like post?
Yeah.
So post with comments larger than the license. Okay, and post.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
That's we'll get into that. That's about the analytics. Josie is saying store hours and food description. Right. So store hours. Informational versus persuasive. Right. Fernando, what do you mean by persuasive?
Well, for example, when they say like what's better than Sunset and a Peterson's donut, they're trying to get people to think about like sunsets, which is something good, with Peterson's donuts. So they're trying to like kind of persuade
Yeah.
people
So
who are reading it to get a Peterson's donut, but they're not actually providing any information that is needed. For example, like the store hours.
So one sort of post is about, yeah, just promoting the store, and some others actually providing you with specific information, right? And right. So that's some categories you can apply into the content you see on Facebook. Right? So what was the point of all of this? So this is the idea of like how you code or how you categorize or content analyze for latent variables without a pre-established code book or coding guide. So we said before, if you remember, like with some researchers doing content analysis, they establish a guidebook, they write it down, and they say, okay, if you see this, then it would belong to that group, right? What you were doing right here, like you were just looking into pictures, you did not identify them based on like just the most basic appearance. So is it a picture or not? But you were trying to figure out what are like the embedded differences, because the example, the one from the zoo, they're all animals, right? But you figure out some pictures are showing baby animals, some pictures are not. So you're getting the meaning embedded in the content after you read it, all right? And so this is why it gets complicated sometimes, because you don't have a pre-established guide. Look at the content and then you come up with it. So yeah, there are different examples we tried, but assuming we want to apply this to the research accounts on Instagram, we want to research advertising, we want to research video clips, we want to research movie posters. What type of categories we would come up with? Because again, those materials don't come up with a code book ready for you to apply. You look at them and then you try to figure out how you can come up with categories that could summarize the content you see, right? So here's some examples. Like if you want to code yoga posts on Instagram based on ideal body message, you can have 3 categories, right? Body positivity, neutral, body dissatisfaction, right? You want to code celebrity post based on purpose, let's say by Anthony Davis or Kevin Durant. Was it a promotional, entertaining, or informative? And so, yes, you come up with, after you expose yourself to the content, you sort of come up with different themes that could summarize what you've seen. What would be a problem, though, in real life? What would be the difficulty regarding this approach? Why would it be difficult?
That they're not mutually exclusive sometimes.
Right. So the problem is establishing mutual exclusivity. Like, yeah. In other words, so you can think of it as like promotional, entertaining, informative. Conceptually, you might think of them as distinct, but when you look at certain posts, they can fall in either one, right? And so that's basically the idea of why you need to do inductive content analysis. Let me actually, so inductive content analysis or qualitative content analysis. So as opposed to the deductive content analysis, what you do is actually you start from the cases and then you develop the coding scheme afterwards, right? So you don't impose a coding scheme borrowed from someone else or like that you develop beforehand and then apply it. And the reason is what's useful is what Jared has said, right? If you come up with something that you read after that you produced after you read the content, that means those themes emerge from the content you've seen, and then you figure out what differentiated them, right? So the pictures, for example, we saw from like Anthony Davis, right? So they were promotional or non-promotional, right? But assume, for example, that you had that thing, right? Like you had that category in mind, and then you wanted to code the Instagram account of someone else, another basketball player, and you find like they don't do any promotion whatsoever, for example, or maybe they do promotion in a more like, how to put it, implicit way, right? So they don't like carry something, but similar to what we've seen, if you walk, but you make sure like the Nike shoes with the Nike logo appears. Would that be promotional or not, right? So, because the themes you created were based off someone else's accounts, it made sense there, but it might not make sense in another account, right? So the idea of the inductive approach is to say, you know what, the best approach is that you immerse yourself in the content you're going to analyze, and then come up with the themes that become apparent to you, right? And that can be can be from the most similar to what we said, from like latent or like manifest to latent, can be from the most apparent feature to the least apparent. All right. So yeah, like, does it have like a headphone or no headphone, or like a baby animal or no baby animal, right? Or you can go into look into embedded meanings. So for example, looking into magazine covers, you then want to say post with the most positive tone about the body, post with the most thin ideal tone about the body, and posts that are in between, right? And if you do this following the inductive approach, so you see like here, this is relative, like the most positive and the most thin ideal. That means you put all of the pictures into a scale. So in other words, you don't have a pre-established definition of what a positive tone is. You have some notion, you have some basic understanding, but what is the most, what does positive body positivity means? But when you look at the content and you see, okay, I see these type of posts sort of more tilted toward body positivity, and these type of posts sort of tilted towards promoting thin ideal, and here are some posts on between. The parameters that, or like the criteria for the categories were not imposed from somewhere else, but it described the range or scale of the content you're looking at. Did that make sense, or did I make things more complicated? You see what I'm saying? So to give you a counter example, remember when we talked last week about looking into a scale of what like objectively thin and objectively curvy, remember that? And then they had a very specific body size. If you go over it, it's curvy. If you go under it, it's thin. Well, this approach will be different because you would then look at different bodies. You see where the median is, and then you align like the two other categories or to the other extremes to the left and the right of that, okay? So this one emerges from the content. The other one, you have a pre-established criteria and you apply it to the content, right? But so this is how it's done. And then you create the coding scheme. So you write down how you differentiated between the levels afterwards. And after you finish, you'll end up with the coding scheme, right? After you finish analyzing, you explain or rationalize your choices. You explain the logic behind them. And those explanations will constitute the coding scheme. So I chose thin body images based off 1, 2, 3, and that will be considered what your code is. And so yeah, so the key difference in content analysis is you start with the content with no code book, maybe just some rough ideas of what you're looking at. So promotional, non-promotional, thin bodies, positive body, etc. Violent, non-violent, just some general idea of what you're looking for. And then as you look into the content, you develop the coding scheme. You come up with roughly like some categories, and then you explain how you came up with your choices. And here are pictures of like animals, because animals, you can classify them in predatory, non-predatory, like herbivores, carnivores, old world animals, new world animals, Arctic animals, non-Arctic animals, right? Flying animals, non-flying animals, mammals, reptiles, birds, etc. Right? There are different ways to classify animals, not necessarily based on the scientific taxonomy, but in any way you think. And each classification is valid depending on what your research question is, right? Do people in who follow the San Diego Zoo, do they like pictures of predatory animals more than non-predatory animals or less? Which type of animals generate largest number of likes, for example? Like if you have like winter, or cold weather's animals or warm weather's animals, do you see a difference for how people react to them? You know, so the point is there's no one right answer. There are multiple legitimate answers. What does that remind you of? When we say there's no one right answer, but we have multiple legitimate answers. What do you call that approach? No one remembers. So that's based off the interpretive approach, if you recall. We took there's an empirical approach, interpretive approach, and critical approach. And the interpretive approach say, yeah, there's multiple ways to describe reality, and there's no necessarily one that's better than the other. Well, in some cases that is true. Like it depends on what you're looking for. And so here's like to show you like the difference again. So in content analysis, last week we looked into the quantitative or like the deductive approach. The first 3 steps are the same. So you prepare the sample, select units for analysis, organize the data, and then you would have a structured categories for analysis and criteria for which how you would assign each case or each unit of analysis into which category. You train your coders on that. You code according to the code book. You compare if you have a level of agreement, and you test the relationship between whatever variables, right? And then after following that, you would propose a new system or like a new model to explain the phenomena, whether it's about social media accounts, animal pictures, magazine covers, you name it. Whereas the inductive approach, you start with flexible open coding. So you don't have preconceived notions or like preconceived categories when you start codings. You just generate some tags or descriptions. So and those don't have to be mutually exclusive, right? So okay, this is promotional, this is informative, this has headphones, this doesn't have headphones. And then afterwards, you try to disentangle them or group them together. So, okay, you would minimize, okay, let me merge these 2, split that one into 2, and then merge the other one into it, things like that. You come up with different tags, and then you would combine them or group them into different categories. You try to then refine the categories to have something like very clear criteria. And then you apply that to reassign the cases with the units of analysis to the categories you have. So yeah, here it goes like you go into 2 rounds, you look at the content, come up with the categories, then come back again when you have fully refined categories that are mutually exclusive, and you reassign the cases again into these categories, right? So we sort of like explain this, but the most important thing then, what's the point? Like, what's the purpose? Why are we doing this? The purpose in deductive or quantitative content analysis, the purpose is summative. That's technical word for it. And summative is like what we saw, maybe if you read the paper last week, they are interested in comparing percentages of different categories. So what percentage of pictures had like women wearing bikinis? Remember in that article, so is it like 19%, 25%? Versus wearing like workout clothing versus wearing something else. They want to look at proportions, right? You compare proportions. Whereas for the qualitative, it's had a thematic purpose. And so you're not interested into the percentages or proportions, but I want to understand what themes or like what major things that this content is using. So if we go back to the promotional, if you go back to Anthony Davis account, for example, you might not be interested into which percentage of Anthony Davis posts are promotional. But you just want to see, you just want to like read like a bunch of accounts from basketball players, and you want to see the things they are talked to. You just want to identify them. So it's more like an exploratory type of thing. You're not really interested in the numbers per se. But you want to see, okay, here's how they do promotion, or here's how they do pictures before they go into the court, or like here's the type of picture they see when they're playing, right? So it's just about describing different themes from different bodies of work. And that would allow then the reader to understand the major things or like the major themes of the content that's being analyzed. So you see the difference here, like this difference in the goal as well. So as I said, we already said like one would rely on open coding. So that's the inductive, the deductive. No, you're trained to follow a specific code book. And in terms of reliability, so we mentioned that in quantitative content analysis, you need to have intercoder reliability. That is to say, the 2 coders or more have to statistically agree, like a high percentage of like correlation, and it has a different way to measure it mathematically. So like 90% of the cases they agree, or 70% at least. But with qualitative, you don't have to run like a statistical comparison per se, but just if 2 coders meet and see if their categories and assignments sort of agree with one another. So they can come back and change. So intercoder agreement in qualitative content analysis is based off like 2 perspectives, 2 people with 2 perspectives meeting together and then reaching some consensus, right? So again, it's not based on a specific number or threshold that the level of agreement needs to meet. Just this is a slide. So when you study, you find definitions. I like when I mention things that you have a definition. So open coding, I mentioned this before. So it's a process of assigning cases, like conducting content analysis per se, without relying on a coding scheme or coding guide. Maybe just some rough idea of what you're trying to do, but there's no description of what the categories are going to be. It could be structured or unstructured. So structured, at least you have some categories in mind, like, okay, you might have the titles, but not necessarily the descriptions. But unstructured would be like totally open. You have no conception of what you're trying to find whatsoever. You're just starting to follow a new Instagram account, for example, and you just wanting to explore what this account is all about. And so you will totally come up with, yeah. There's some research I've done actually where I looked into Instagram accounts, and I then came up with the idea, like if people are trying to look more extroverted or less extroverted, right? And then I assign different facial features or different bodily features into each category. So with high extroversion, I assign smiling, direct eye contact, being surrounded by others. And low extroversion, like if you're having a neutral facial expression or like shying away from the camera, or like being alone. So again, those things are like emerged after the impression. You get an impression of someone, and then you try to figure out what made you arrive at that impression, right? Tags are just initial descriptives you give to like the text or pictures you see. So yeah, you see one picture and then you come up with different adjectives. Yeah, it's informative, it's funny, it's dark, it's colorful. And then you summarize the tags into subcategories, right? So, okay, so you might put, okay, playing in the court, practicing, and then maybe running. You will put that all into like physical activities. And other things would be, for example, like sitting with friends, drinking, playing video games. You could put them all into another subcategory, which is like free time. Okay. So you came up, you see, so you have some initial ideas or tags about the content, and then you merge them together into subcategories. And then those subcategories can then be merged, right? So similar to what we said before, you're looking for something that has a manageable number of categories. And it's similar. You can have subcategories. They could be 8, 9, but then you need to like narrow them down into like 3, 4, 5 to become more manageable when you conduct your content analysis. You know what tags are even in like social media, like hashtags, like on Instagram or Twitter, right? So it is similar, like it's something just to describe what the tweet or post is about. And then, yeah, similarly, you can do it yourself, which would help you then to assign like specific categories to content. So I think I'll leave this. So, okay, so for the last, we have like 10 minutes, so we'll try to fit this in. So you have an activity. So we'll go into like 3 breakout rooms. So I want you to go to Twitter, Starbucks Twitter account. Okay. And just in general, like go over 20-ish, 30 tweets and try to come up with 3 themes or 3 categories that pretty much describe what sort of post does Starbucks do. All right. Just something general. Doesn't need to be exhaustive. Doesn't need to be thorough. Just look at Starbucks tweets and whatever like 3 categories come to mind, yeah, start like to write them down somewhere. Okay. Then at the end, share them with the group you're in and see if you agree or not. Okay, so just discuss it among yourself, and at the end of the class, like you have 10 minutes, we'll come back and see what you guys were having. Okay, so let me is this point clear? Okay, so let me do breakout rooms. So Jose and Miley, I'm assuming you need to be in the same group. That's correct, right? Okay. Okay. And this is okay. Because I'm in. So how many people we have? So we're going to have okay, this is completely random. Not random, it's based off the how you guys are like ordered on my end. So Josie, you're one room leader, okay, because you're the first window on the top of my screen, okay. And then I have room Grant. And then I have, okay, room Tommy, okay. All right, so you can assign yourself to whichever room you like. So you see the rooms?
I actually don't see any room.
You're assigned already.
Okay, I'm still in this chat and I can't, there's nowhere for me to join or anything.
Uh,
There we go. Thank you.
oh, okay. You see it? Santiago, are you here?